He married her without seeing her face, an act so unthinkable in the courts of medieval Europe that even the priests exchanged uneasy glances. The alliance was rushed, sealed in silence, arranged behind locked doors as if the bride herself were a state secret. When the prince took her hand at the altar, her fingers were trembling, gloved, and cold as river stone. No one dared raise their eyes to her. No one dared speak her name above a whisper. And yet the kingdom celebrated the union as if nothing were amiss. But the truth was coiled beneath that veil like a tightly kept confession. And when the moment finally came, when Prince Alistair lifted the silk covering her face before the watching nobility, the world around him seemed to tilt. The guests gasped, the priests froze mid-prayer, and in the echoing stillness of that cathedral, he realized that the woman standing before him was not the bride he had been promised, nor the future he had prepared to inherit. Before we unravel the secret that forced an entire kingdom into silence, and the reason this marriage changed the fate of two nations, make sure you subscribe to our channel so you never miss the stories history almost erased. For hours after the ceremony, Prince Alistair replayed the moment in his mind. The lifting of the veil, the stunned silence, the way the cathedral's stained glass windows seemed to darken all at once. He had expected Princess Elowen of Varenth. Her portraits had traveled across borders for months. He had memorized the curve of her smile, the delicate sharpness of her cheekbones, the quiet elegance that diplomats praised whenever they spoke her name. But the woman standing before him had been someone else entirely, a stranger, beautiful perhaps, but unfamiliar, her features bearing no resemblance to the bride he had been promised. Yet the court applauded. The treaty was announced, the bells rang, and Alistair was forced to smile, while the truth lodged in his throat like a blade. When the doors of the cathedral finally shut behind them, he felt the weight of every unanswered question pressing against his ribs. The woman, his wife, walked beside him with small, controlled step, as if terrified her dress might betray her. She did not speak. She didn't even look at him. Her face, now revealed, carried the stiffness of someone who had been taught to hide expressions rather than show them. Inside the royal carriage, he watched her carefully. "You are not Princess Elowen," he said, quietly but firmly. It wasn't an accusation. It was the simplest truth. She flinched, not dramatically, but enough for him to notice. Her hands folded tightly in her lap, her knuckles pale. "I am the bride your council accepted," she replied, without meeting his gaze. Her voice was soft, too soft for someone raised in royal courts. "And the bride your kingdom needed." None of it made sense. Varenth had promised their heir, their future queen, to secure peace after 5 years of border skirmishes. Replacing her without warning, without explanation, was not a mistake. It was a strategy, a deliberate deception. But for what purpose? When they arrived at the palace, the grand hall erupted with applause. Nobles bowed, musicians played triumphant chords, and servants lined up in perfectly rehearsed displays of reverence. But beneath the gold and celebration, Alistair sensed something else, an undercurrent of unease. Glances exchanged behind fans, whispers snatched quickly away the moment he turned. The queen, his mother, approached and embraced the bride with an enthusiasm so practiced it bordered on performance. Her eyes flicked toward Alistair only once, sharp and warning, before she returned her attention to the new princess. Later, when protocol forced them into the wedding feast, he leaned close to his mother, and whispered, "Who is she?" Her expression did not change. "Your wife," she murmured, lifting her goblet as though commenting on the wine. "And you will treat her as such." He stared at her stunned. "Mother, Varinth lied. They sent someone else. Elowyn is no longer part of the agreement," she interrupted calmly. "The matter is settled." Settled, as though the identity of his bride were a trivial detail, nothing more than a misplaced parchment. Alistair wanted to demand answers, but the Queen had already returned her attention to a cluster of ambassadors, her posture cold, immovable. That night, palace musicians played late into the evening, but the celebration felt hollow. The new princess remained quiet beside him, answering questions with diplomatic politeness, never revealing more than necessary. The nobles watched her with fascination, as if trying to pinpoint the truth. She refused to speak. As the feast dwindled and guests began to disperse, Alistair escorted her to their private chambers. Inside, the air felt thick with everything unsaid. She removed her jewelry with slow, deliberate movements, each gesture meticulous, almost ritualistic. Finally, he spoke again, unable to contain the storm building inside him. "At least tell me your name." She stopped, her hands lowered. For the first time since the ceremony, she lifted her gaze fully to meet his. There was fear in her eyes, but also something harder, resolve. "My name is Lysandra," she said, "second daughter of King Theron, younger sister to Princess Elowyn, a second daughter, a forgotten royal, one no one had spoken of in negotiations." Alistair had heard the name only once, years ago, attached to rumors that Varinth kept carefully out of foreign courts. A daughter who rarely appeared in public, a daughter who had been abruptly removed from diplomatic events before she reached adulthood, a daughter whispered to be unsuitable. But before he could ask more, she continued quietly, "I did not choose this deception. I was told I must protect my family and yours." "Protect from what?" Her voice dropped even lower. "Elowyn, she is gone." The words hit him with the force of a blade driven straight into the chest. Gone. Not ill, not missing. Gone. As if the kingdom had erased her overnight. Before he could press her, demand the truth, demand who had died, who had killed, who had lied. The doors to their chamber burst open, slamming against the stone walls. A breathless guard stumbled in, pale and shaking. "Your Highness," he gasped. "There's been an incident." Alistair stepped forward. "What incident?" The guard swallowed hard, his voice trembling as he forced out the words. "Princess Elowyn's body has been found inside the palace." The corridor outside their chamber was already filling with anxious murmurs by the time Alistair and Lysandra stepped out. Guards rushed past with torches, their boots scraping sharply against the stone floor. Somewhere deeper in the palace, a bell was ringing, not the ceremonial kind used during weddings or coronations, but the low, grim toll reserved only for emergencies, deaths, or treason. Alistair's pulse hammered as he followed the guard down the staircase. Lysandra remained close behind him, her steps silent, her expression unreadable. It was impossible to forget the revelation she had given him moments earlier, the quiet confession that her sister, the princess he was meant to marry, was gone. Yet even in that moment, even in her fear, she had not looked surprised when the guard announced that Elowyn's body had been found. As they approached the lower wing, the smell hit first. Iron, stale, and heavy. Blood. The corridor was dim, lit only by a scattering of torches fixed to the wall. Servants huddled near doorways, hands pressed to their mouths, eyes wide with horror. The guards parted without a word as Alistair entered the chamber. What lay inside stopped him cold. Princess Elowen's body was laid upon a long oak table, her once treasured ceremonial gown soaked through with dried, darkened blood. Her face, pale, serene, almost peaceful, looked nothing like the political portraits he had memorized, but it was unmistakably her. The golden hair, the gentle jawline, the faint scar near her temple he had once been told she received from a fall as a child. She had been dead for hours, possibly days. A sickening realization seeped through his chest. This happened before the wedding. One of the guards nodded stiffly. The body was discovered behind the sealed wine cellars, sire, hidden beneath a cloth someone meant for her to stay unfound. Lysandra moved to the table, her hands trembling visibly for the first time. She touched her sister's arm with a reverence so fragile it felt like the slightest sound might break her. Tears gathered in her eyes, quickly blinked away, but not fast enough to hide. Alistair watched her, feeling a knot tighten in his stomach. There was grief there, yes, but also guilt. Heavy, suffocating guilt. He turned to the guards. How long has she been dead? From the state of the body, at least 3 days. Your Highness, 3 days. That meant she had been murdered before the Varinth delegation ever crossed into the city. His bride had been dead long before he stood at the altar. Alistair felt heat rising in his chest, fury threatening to burn through his skin. My kingdom was forced into a marriage under false pretenses, he said through clenched teeth. Varinth deceived us. The guard hesitated. Sire, with respect, I don't believe Varinth knew. Alistair stared at him. Explain. We found something else with the body. The guard swallowed. A seal, not from Varinth. He extended a gloved hand and placed the object in Alistair's palm. The moment Alistair saw the insignia, the breath left his chest. It was the crest of Renford, his own kingdom, a symbol only members of his council were permitted to carry. Alistair's vision blurred with rage. His mother's unwavering composure during the wedding, the council's silence, the sudden insistence that the matter was settled. It all twisted together into something poisonous. He turned to Lysandra. You knew. She didn't deny it. Her shoulders rose and fell with a quiet, resigned breath. I suspected, but I was not allowed to speak. Suspected? He demanded. Or knew? Her eyes met his, and something inside her broke. I knew my sister was in danger. I knew the council wanted the marriage to happen no matter what. And I knew Varinth feared the consequences if the treaty fell apart. Her voice wavered. But I did not know she was already dead. Not until tonight. Why replace her with you? He asked, his voice raw. Lysandra lowered her gaze. Because I was expendable. And because I could pass for her from a distance. She touched her own cheek lightly. Enough resemblance to avoid suspicion. Enough differences to be hidden behind a veil. Alistair felt the world tilt, rage and betrayal clawing through his ribcage. My own council arranged this deceit. They wanted peace, she whispered. They feared war, more than truth, peace. A thin, fragile excuse for murder and manipulation. But before Alistair could speak again, a second guard rushed into the room, breathless and wide-eyed. Your Highness, there is a message. Urgent, from the Queen. Alistair stiffened. What message? The guard looked at him, swallowing hard. Her Majesty requests your presence immediately in the War Council chamber. He paused, visibly shaken. She said to tell you this. The girl you married is not the only one hiding something. Alistair turned sharply toward Lysandra, but she wasn't looking at him. Her eyes were fixed on the doorway, where another figure now stood, a woman in travel-worn clothes, bruised, barely recognizable, leaning weakly against the frame. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Alistair?" He froze. It was Princess Elowen, alive, and the dead woman on the table was someone else entirely. For a long, breathless moment, no one moved. Even the torches along the stone walls seemed to flicker in disbelief as Princess Elowen staggered forward, her body weakened, her face gaunt, bruised, and nothing like the polished portraits sent across nations. Alistair felt as if the ground beneath him shifted, reality buckling under the weight of what stood before him. Two sisters, one dead on the table, one alive in the doorway, and a marriage built on deception tightening around his throat like a noose. Lysandra's lips parted, trembling. "Elowen, you're alive?" Her voice cracked with something between relief and terror. The emotion in her eyes was unmistakable. This was no imposter's surprise. This was the raw shock of a sister who had mourned in silence. Elowen tried to speak, but her voice broke. She had to steady herself against the wall before she whispered, "They tried to kill me. I escaped, barely." Alistair stepped toward her, disbelief still clouding his senses. "If you're alive, then who?" Elowen looked at the body on the table and swallowed hard. "One of my attendants, a lady-in-waiting named Cerise. She looked enough like me for someone who hadn't seen me closely in months. They killed her in my gown to cover my disappearance." Lysandra pressed a hand to her mouth, horrified. "Cerise was loyal to you. She adored you." Elowen's voice trembled. "And she died because someone wanted the world to believe I was gone." The room felt colder, the air tightening around them. Alistair glanced at the crest he still held, the Renford seal found with the dead woman. Someone within his own kingdom had played a role in this deception. Someone powerful, someone with access. His mother's message echoed in his mind. "The girl you married is not the only one hiding something." He turned sharply to the guard who delivered the summon. "My mother is in the War Council chamber now." "Yes, Your Highness." Alistair looked at both sisters. "Come with me." Lysandra hesitated, but Elowen nodded weakly, determination flickering in her tired eyes. Whatever horror she had endured, she was not the fragile figure he had been promised. There was iron beneath the bruises. They moved through narrow corridors, the palace now eerily silent. It was well past midnight, but the War Council chamber glowed with candlelight. The heavy, iron-banded doors were slightly ajar, as if left open intentionally. Inside, Queen Mirella stood alone beside the great table, her posture regal, yet heavy with tension. Maps lay unfurled before her, but she didn't look at them. She looked only at Alistair and at the two women behind him. "So," she said quietly, "the truth walks on two legs." Elowen stepped forward. "Your Majesty, you ordered my disappearance?" The Queen exhaled slowly. "No, but I was told you had vanished." The council panicked. They feared Varinth would blame us. They feared war. Peace was fragile, held together by the promise of your marriage to my son. Her eyes flicked to Alistair, and in their desperation, they made reckless decisions, ones I did not authorize. Alistair felt the familiar sting of suspicion. "Then how do you explain the seal found with the body?" "That," the Queen replied, "is what I intend to discover." Her jaw tightened. "But you must understand, your father's council has long stopped listening to me. They act in shadows, and I believe they struck a deal with Varinth's ministers to replace Elowen quickly Before word spread, Eowyn shook her head. Varinth did not send Lysandra. They would never risk such a scandal. Someone forged official letters. Someone silenced my attendants. Someone used my sister as a pawn. The Queen's expression darkened. Then it is worse than I feared. Silence coiled through the chamber like smoke. At last, Alistair turned to Lysandra, his voice gentler than it had been hours earlier. Did you know any of this? Tears welled in her eyes. Only pieces. They told me Eowyn was missing, that the treaty would collapse without a bride. They said if I didn't cooperate, if I didn't stand in her place, Varinth's regents might start a war to avenge her disappearance. I believed them. I thought I was preventing bloodshed. Her voice cracked. I didn't know Cerise had been killed. I didn't know they meant for the truth to stay buried forever. Eowyn reached out, placing a trembling hand on her sister's. Lysandra, you were used. The Queen stepped closer, her voice low. The Council plans to meet at dawn. They will try to hide what happened. They will blame Varinth. They may even try to imprison both of you. Eowyn for surviving, Lysandra for knowing too much. Alistair's anger hardened. Then we expose them before they act. The Queen nodded once, as if she had been waiting for those words. But the moment we confront them, the kingdom will fracture. Some will side with us. Some will see your marriage as invalid. Her gaze drifted to Lysandra. And some will claim Alistair has 2 wives. Lysandra's face paled. I never wanted this. I never wanted any of it. Alistair stepped closer to her, his expression solemn. Then let the truth free you, both of you. Before anyone could speak further, the chamber doors slammed open. 3 councilmen stormed in, flanked by armored guards. Their expressions were cold, resolute. The tallest councilman stepped forward. Your Highness, he said to the Queen, you should not have gathered them here. His gaze drifted to Alistair and the sisters, his eyes narrowing. This matter has already been resolved. Alistair felt his hand instinctively drift toward the dagger at his side. Resolved how? The councilman smiled, a thin, calculated smile that made Alistair's blood run cold. By removing the final obstacle to peace, he raised his hand, and the guards lifted their crossbows, aimed directly at Eowyn and Lysandra. History teaches us this again and again. Secrets demand silence, but justice demands a voice, and those who dare to question the story they are given often become the ones who change the world around them. If you found this story gripping, powerful, or thought-provoking, make sure to subscribe to our channel. There are countless more forgotten histories, untold truths, and human struggles waiting to be uncovered, and we'll bring them to you, one story at a time.